Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to talk about sources of income that you can do online. So all you really need is a laptop, a few pieces of software, and a small amount of money to get started. The main point is that with little money, you can get going in a short time and work online with the help of a computer or a laptop. We can even call these passive income sources or passive income, although everyone knows that these aren't real. Completely passive, especially not at the very beginning, because first you have to build them up or put in some serious work, and basically, over time, they'll start to generate a kind of automated income. This comes later. So I'd rather call these incomes that can be automated in the long run, but we all know people prefer the term passive income. Anyway, let's get started. Today, for example, I'll bring you some examples from my own experience and also from a bit of research. I won't go into detail today about trading and Forex, as that's just one source of income, and the other videos are all about that. So today we'll be heading in a slightly different direction, and I'll try to present these other types of income sources in a bit more detail, and, as they say, in a more family-friendly way to share with you, so that it doesn't seem like such a distant or unattainable thing. So, if you're interested in these topics, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with any questions you have, what topics you'd like to hear about, or where you might be stuck. And based on that, I can answer you or make future videos. Let's jump right in. The first opportunity that comes to mind now is that pops into my head is selling products online, which we call an online shop. At first, this might sound complicated and difficult, but it's really not. It's very easy to source products that you'd like to sell on the internet. The important thing here is to create a website for yourself. If you don't know how to do it, there's always a friend of a friend who's a web designer, right? Instead of that, put the products up, and then you can sell them either through social media or with paid advertisements. By the way, if you absolutely don't have such a mate, there are still those websites where you basically just drag and drop elements next to or behind each other. They're subscription based and dead easy to use. I won't mention them now, they're not sponsoring me anyway. Now, here it's very important not to think that with an online shop you need to have 100 different products and a massive warehouse to go with them. Because, the idea is that the more you buy at once, the cheaper you get it, and then whatever you save there, that's your little profit margin. That's all well and good, of course, if you've got loads of products, but even if you're only working with a single product, let me give you an example here. Say, I don't know, those glasses, the yellow tinted ones you typically see gamers wearing, or in general, they use the yellow tint because it blocks out the blue light that comes from the monitor. For example, if you build a website just for these and sell this product through it, you'll get your orders coming in. But you could do the same thing with dietary supplements. You simply need a contact and a good profit margin. You could do this with vitamins, USB sticks, or perhaps you could be the one who imports Chinese products and sells them on your own website. So you just need to find that niche which hasn't already been filled by loads of people on the Hungarian market. Of course, you don't have to focus only on Hungary. You could go international as well if you know a bit of English. And if you don't, you can always hire someone whose English is better than yours. By the way, we also had a podcast on this topic, or rather, not exactly on this topic, but about the stock market, because he was one of our students, or maybe still is. I'm not sure how much he's involved with it at the moment. But the lad was incredibly young. His name was Attila, and if I remember correctly, this is how he made his first millions. Ben. I'll put the link to that podcast with him in the description below. He's a really clever lad. Hats off to him for achieving such success at such a young age. But this is one of those things where, fortunately, you don't need to have political connections or, say, your godfather doesn't have to be, I don't know, the Prince of Monaco. But, well, anyone can start, anyone can do it, anyone can make a nice bit of money from it. And it's really important that you don't need to invest a lot of money. In fact, it's enough to order just 10 or 20 of the product you've chosen to push once you've got your supplier. And if you can sell these products at a high profit with just a daily advertising budget of 1 or 2,000 forints, then this can actually be a brilliant way to get started. And I guarantee it will not take you 8 to 10 hours a day at the beginning like a factory job would. The second option is affiliate marketing. Here, you will be showing an existing software, service, or product or products to others. As a result, the person you show it to will benefit because you have referred them, and you will also receive some sort of benefit, usually either a percentage of the sale or extras related to the software. Of course, this absolutely depends on the company, what they offer in return, but generally, as I said, they give you a certain percentage of the profit for bringing in a new customer or lead. Personally, I really like it when we use a software. For trading, it's basically a trade manager, the only expert advisor I have installed on my MetaTrader. And if I need to step away from the computer, it can manage my trades for me, move to break even, set stops, take partial profits, and so on. Now, for example, they offer this product. I think it's about $100, and they don't offer a percentage to those who refer others. But the extra linked to the product is that if you recommend them, they actually give you unlimited accounts. You can use as many accounts as you like. It's not a big deal, but it's something. Obviously, you can't make a living from this, and I haven't really focused much on affiliate marketing. Amazon. Amazon has loads of these affiliate programs. You can basically look into this topic with a quick Google search, and you'll see, for example, if you recommend Nikon's camera, saying that's what you use to record your video, then you'll receive a certain amount for purchases made by your referrals. That's just one example. Or, for instance, Amazon also has an affiliate program for their audiobooks. Have a look into it. Basically, all you really need for this is a follower base, or you can just keep sharing the link with your friends on social media. The third option is consultancy. For this, all you need is a laptop and internet access. Through social media or a website, you can show people what services you offer, how you can help them, what, that is the I and B points between which you guide them, and you'll be able to show them the specific results. It's important to choose a topic in which you're fairly knowledgeable, where you've already achieved results, so you can be credible in their eyes. And of course, you should demonstrate all this with examples. But you don't need to think of anything complicated. You can, for instance, help them with their diet, their training, finances, or legal matters. Even with designing a brand identity. Naturally, it's important that you're credible in this field and start building a community or seek out people, even online, who you feel you could help, people who could benefit from your assistance. And if we return to the previous example, if you happen to be a good web designer or a good programmer, you can apply this approach to that area as well, including your studies, to run it as a consultancy service, naturally, not for free. Let's move on. The fourth business idea is to learn a skill, a capability that can be sold for a relatively high price. I'm thinking, for example, of Photoshop, video editing, or, again, building websites. By the way, websites keep coming up as an example, and the reason it can be useful for you, even if you're not in this profession, because nowadays, in the 21st century, there isn't a business that doesn't use a website. It's a bit like how business cards used to be back in the day. So, if you want to present yourself, this is who I am, this is what I do, You need a website. That's usually the first question, and it's the first thing people will search for on Google if you pop up in their field of interest. Not to mention, it's the easiest way for people to find you from places you wouldn't even expect. So, if you don't yet have the qualification to build websites, or you're not really drawn to it, this could be something worth investing your time in. I say time because there's a wealth of material available on YouTube, free resources, I mean, and once you've got the skill, then which site is it again? Fiverr.com. You can advertise yourself there, offering your services. Or there's another one, if it comes to mind, I'll mention it. The main thing is to keep in mind how you can help other people's businesses, how you can move them forward, and how you can take on tasks that everyone faces, or at least those working in that particular field, and be a valuable support to them. You can be. Because bear in mind that by charging money for this and helping others with your service, you're also helping yourself and saving money, since you'll be able to do it for yourself in the future as well. And I don't want to keep harping on about websites, but for example, your Photoshop images, which you'll use to promote yourself on social media in the future. So it's a win-win situation. For instance, you could even design their branding or help them with graphic design work. You could design their flyers. All of these are very useful skills that can be sold at a high price. If you look at it in terms of hourly rates, you can earn very good money. And over time, you can develop this further to the point where your existing tutorial videos, your existing digital products in the given field. So, for example, how to build a website 101 from the very first step, you could, for example, sell this to others. The fifth business idea is to become a freelancer or a virtual assistant. This is somewhat related to the previous one, but the difference is that as a virtual assistant, you can take part in longer projects and work with an entrepreneur over a longer period. To give you an example, you might manage their adverts, their online adverts, or manage their websites, or write articles for them. That's the content creator role. Or you might gather keywords for their articles, supporting their SEO if, for example, the article is going on a blog. So there are loads of areas where such assistants are needed, and all of these are jobs where you can be involved in the growth of their business over the long term. The great thing about this is that nowadays there's no need for you to be physically present to go into their office. They simply assign you the appropriate task, and you complete all of this for a fee. Sixth business idea, and now don't laugh, become an influencer. This is ideal for those who already have an existing following, say on Instagram, but honestly, you can start from scratch as well. The main thing here is to be yourself, showcase your own life, and help the people who follow you. Build up a good community, and in return, you can then ask for money to show these people something extra, or perhaps you can promote products. Product developers or sellers are always looking for influencers, and you don't have to think of anything dodgy. For example, for girls, it might be a new shampoo or a new addition within a brand that needs promoting. These are regularly given to influencers. They hand them out. Influencing, by the way, is quite fashionable and widespread these days, but few people do it really well because it requires precise, high-quality work. I mean this both in terms of creating your own page or social media profile and in presenting other people's products. Seventh business idea, sell digital products. By this, I mean, for example, create an ebook, a PDF, or make something even bigger than that. Something bigger, like a video course where you teach people something. For example, how to use Photoshop or how to use a video editing software. Believe me, there will always be someone who is just starting out, just getting into this, and needs a guide. Now, if you already have a skill, say you can play the guitar, then you can teach these things to people in such a way that you sell your own product and your own service online, showing exactly how and in what way the beginner should strum those strings on their very first day. You sell this through a website, build adverts to drive traffic to the site, and if you've put together a good offer at a good price, those who are actually interested in this will buy it. And I've brought for you another little business idea as a gift for you. And this is nothing other than starting a YouTube channel. This is sort of 7.5. So after the seventh business, this is like a 7.5. This is good because at the beginning, you have to put in a lot of work. But in the long run, if you use YouTube ads, it can still earn you money month after month. Or even if you're no longer making videos as regularly, or if you're doing anything else from the previous business ideas. So, for example, if you have a good course that you'd like to sell, a YouTube channel is also suitable for that. And if you paid a bit more attention, you might have noticed connections between the different business ideas. And the really nice thing about this is that you can do them alongside each other, even if there are 7 or 8 things, because it doesn't take up all day, as long as you've already established a routine for them. You can develop these either by building on each other or by drawing conclusions from one to the next, and you can create several different sources of income. Ultimately, my advice to you is to aim for this, so don't just do the one thing and don't just focus on a single topic. But if you have a basic income, then afterwards aim to build from that income or from that activity another source of income in a sort of step-by-step layered way. This way, you can achieve having even 5, 6, 7, or 8 different sources of income, and through these, you can truly become financially independent. Not relying on a single source of income is a huge advantage. It's no coincidence that you've heard from us in every podcast that we absolutely do not recommend starting out in trading on its own, by itself, or perhaps leaving your job in the first few months, or at the first mistake, to do so, and to jump in blindly. Because then, where are you again? Well, you'll end up being extremely dependent on that one single source of income, and this will lead to extra stress and additional psychological effects for you during, before trading, and after trading as well. So we definitely do not recommend it. 8. Am I on number 8 now? Perhaps 8th, your own app on the App Store or the Play Store. Basically, everyone has a good idea at some point, or maybe one of your friends has a good idea. In that case, get together, the 2 or 3 of you. What do you need for this? If you already know how to do it, that's great, because you can make it yourself. And really, what else do you need? If you know how to do it, all you need is a good idea. If you don't know how to do it, you can always pay a programmer who does, and they'll make it for you. In this case, though, you might be looking at an investment of a few million forints, so it's not exactly in the cheap category. The second option, if you don't know how to do it, is to team up with someone who does, and in exchange, you give up a part of your business. You agree on some sort of split. For example, if there are 2 of you, you might split it 50-50. Then share in the future profits. You provide the idea and any other work you can do, and they, so to speak, provide the brains, meaning they'll write the application for you, do the testing, handle the back end, create the design, upload everything, all of which is a massive job. The third option, if you don't know how to do it, is to find people who really like your idea and they do indeed invest, becoming a sort of silent partner in your business, in exchange for giving up, say, 20 to 30 to 40% of your own ownership for the capital they provide. With that capital, you can then pay the programmer who will write this for you. Yes, this is a cheap solution, so there's no investment from your own pocket, but you do give up a portion of your future profits. You wouldn't be the first to do it this way. Do it. That was the 8th, and then a regularly recurring topic is what you invest your money in when you withdraw sums from the stock market month after month. So now I top off these 8 with 2 bonus investments or sources of income. And the reason these two are bonuses is because both require a slightly larger amount of investment. After all, the topic of the video, which you can do online with little money, little capital, and even just a laptop and a piece of software. So, this is exactly not going to be like that. Because, yes, you can do it with a laptop, yes, you can do it with a website, but it might not require just a small amount of money. You might actually need to put down a million or two for this. The first one of these, which I have personal experience with, is cars. Renting them out. This could mean renting out a car you already own, where you're not looking to do it on a large scale, but you do have a car, and as everyone knows, cars come with costs. You have to maintain these cars, so you need to change the oil, replace the filters, brake pads, brake discs, take it for its MOT, and if necessary, change the tyres as well. And of course, you still have to fill it up with petrol. So certainly, you have to pay for insurance, and so on and so forth. Now, there are people who think, what if, when I'm not using it, I could rent out my car, rent out my own vehicle? It doesn't matter what category we're talking about. It could be the tiniest little Hyundai i20, or a Suzuki Swift, or a massive Bentley. It really doesn't matter. The point is, you're not using it every single day regularly, or you don't use it on weekdays, only at weekends, or you don't use it at weekends, only on weekdays. Everyone's background story is different, and on those days, you rent it out. Now, the money you make from this, you're not going to get rich from it, but it's enough to cover the maintenance of the car and your general expenses related to the vehicle. Now, if you take this a bit more seriously and start thinking of it as a business, and of course, this can also be done in several categories. For example, I've seen someone in Hungary renting out a 25-year-old Opel B Astra for 9,000 forints a day, and it worked out perfectly well for them, relatively speaking. And if it got a bit dented or scratched, honestly, you couldn't even tell anymore. That car had been through so much that it hardly mattered. But it was just right for those who were looking for a cheaper car hire and wanted to avoid the usual airport rip-off car rental giants, so it was perfect for that. Then there was the mid-range category, where you probably can't go wrong, and of course the bigger investment, the luxury category, which I won't mention now, as I personally invested my money in the mid-range back then. After all, it's better to diversify both your money and your business with 4 or 5 mid-range cars than with a luxury category, where even a tiny scratch could mean suspending the business while the car is off the market. After all, anyone renting a luxury car will have luxury expectations. So, if your rear bumper's a bit loose, they won't take it. If the alloy is slightly scratched, they still won't take it. So, those are different requirements. But, as the English say, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't keep your eggs in one basket, but in several places. In other words, diversification. The second bonus would again involve a slightly larger investment, and once again, I can only say that you can build one step by step on top of the other, and then you can gradually work your way up from the bottom. If you've earned a bit of capital from one, you can invest it in the next, towards the expectation of a greater profit. Well, I'll put that sentence together nicely. So, if you put together a bit of money, like in Monopoly, when from 4 houses, or was it 5? I can't remember, you buy a hotel, then that will bring in more, and so on and so on. You could do the same here. If one of your businesses brings in enough money, you invest it in a bigger business, and that way you won't be exposed to the constant inflation within countries. It doesn't matter which currency we're talking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be the foreign, how much its value is decreasing. We could talk about the euro, the dollar, or the British pound as well. Everyone experiences inflation, and it's never good to just let your money sit in your account. Because, yes, you might
Be capital strong if something comes up, but when it does, you need to be able to act quickly to keep up.
and so you can't let your hand tremble, just as you wouldn't hesitate before entering a position on the stock market. Well, that's the big build up to this last point. So let's jump right in. The 10th investment for passive or semi passive automated income is none other than the boring, good old property. So, if you've managed to accumulate capital from your other sources of income, or perhaps from sales, if you've managed to gather enough capital to cover your share of a property, then it's worth investing in it. Because in the story of every billionaire big shot, property always plays a major role when building their own portfolio. So why shouldn't it be the same for you? It might be boring, it might be slow, but it's certainly reliable. After all, everyone needs somewhere to live, and a few questions usually come up at the start in situations like this. Because you can always spice things up a little bit. For example, whether you'd invest in property within the country or abroad. Now, if you're investing at home, you obviously have the advantage, assuming you know the area, that you're aware of what's going on around you, how much demand there is, and of course, your income comes in the same currency. On the other hand, if you're thinking about investing abroad, there are locations that pay much better for the same amount of money. For example, if I were to spend the same sum in the centre of Pest as I would in a suburb of London, I know that proportionately I could put aside more money from London. You also need to decide whether you're thinking about letting out a flat or a house. Obviously, house has its advantages and disadvantages, but so does a flat, so it's a smaller investment. Perhaps this is the most important point, as a flat is cheaper. If anything happens outside the four walls in the case of a flat, it's usually sorted out through the service charge. However, if it's inside the four walls, then you have to deal with it yourself. Now, in the case of a house, if anything goes wrong outside the four walls, like an external water pipe, freezing, something goes wrong with the electricity, the roof starts leaking, or a wall collapses, then you have to sort it out yourself from your own pocket. There's no community, no one to share the costs with. It all comes out of your wallet. In return, though, a house is usually bigger, you can ask for more rent, there are more rooms, so the money that comes into your account each month as profit is, in the best case, higher. However, this brings another problem. Because you have to let it out at a higher price, the number of people or the population who can afford or are interested in this more expensive property, I'm talking about a house here, will also be smaller. So the target audience you can aim for will be smaller. It might be harder to let it out. And if we're already talking about renting, then another question arises. Are you thinking in the short term or the long term, right? Long term is safer, definitely. If you find a good tenant, then ideally they will pay for quite a long time. People don't usually move to a new place every year. We like to stay in one place, and generally it's 3 to 5 years. We usually spend in a rented flat, at least in the best case, or according to statistics, at least that's what my own statistics with Coin show. Then there's short term letting, where I have to mention Airbnb, which is a very good thing, but of course it also brings its own costs. Because with short term lets, if someone comes for 3 days, then afterwards you have to clean, change the bedding, do the ironing, and so on and so forth. So that's where the money goes again. And if you don't have the time for all of this, and you do try to do it passively in an automated way, then you hire some management company, and in exchange for a certain percentage, they sort it all out for you. In the best case, you just count the monthly profits coming into your bank account. Again, there are pros and cons to each. That's the answer to all these questions, really. It raises at least 10 more new questions, so there's a lot to talk about here. By the way, if you're thinking about something like this, feel free to write to me and we'll come up with something for you, as one of my companies deals with exactly this. Another of my companies can help you with foreign loans, naturally in Hungarian. That was the advert just now. But back to the concept. If you decide that you definitely want to get started with this, then, as you may have heard, I mentioned a deposit at the very beginning, and the reason for this is let's take a very simple example. Everyone knows him, Donald Trump. He's loaded with billions and millions, or maybe not billions, but he definitely has hundreds of millions of dollars in liquid assets in his own account, that's for sure. And yet, if he were to buy something for 50 million, I'd bet my head that he'd do it all on credit. Because there are bad loans and there are good loans. We may have already discussed this in one of our previous videos, and among the good loans is when you take out a loan in order to manage, start, or maintain a business. And if we look at a flat or a house from the perspective of expenses, regardless of which concept we're considering, then essentially at the very, very end, when everything is sorted, that becomes a business for you, and you need to treat it from a business perspective. This business will have its own costs. Let's say the interest on the loan, which is a monthly fee, comes out of your profit, and whatever remains is yours. That's your profit. So, from this point of view, for everyone, for every major property mogul whose story or book you might read, you'll always come across the word loan when you read about what they invested in and how they did it. Loans aren't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, loans can be a good thing, as long as you're not spending on nonsense and you're not spending money that you absolutely have no chance of covering. For example, there are plenty of cases where someone is living from paycheck to paycheck, but still, the BMW, the place, Station 5, the latest robot Hoover, and the 75-inch telly, they're all there in the living room, and he's paying for them, struggling with the monthly repayments. Now, these are bad loans. These are the ones that make no sense. These are the ones that drag you down, because each one just takes money out of your pocket rather than bringing money into your pocket. So, there are good loans and bad loans. By the way, Robert Kiyosaki explains this really well. He explains this in his book in a way that even a 5-year-old could understand, if anyone's interested. So, I think I'll wrap things up here so the video doesn't go on until morning but stays relatively short. These were the 10 points that I think can be brilliant in terms of semi-passive or automated income. Thank you for watching the video. Please let me know in the comments what questions came to your mind while you were listening, or which topic you'd like me to make a much more detailed video about. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel so it can reach more people easily, and I'm glad you joined me. I hope I was able to help, and I'll see you in the next video.